Okay, apparently it's going through. Let me know if, yeah, I think we are good
Second.
to go.
Yep.
And welcome to Quantum Leap, folks, on February 27th with David and Cory. And we're excited to talk about the second part of a handbook that's really a system of ideas for how to kind of get on the path to success, and it's based on a lot of the ideas Cory teaches that I've learned from him, that I've learned from Ivan, that I've learned from B and I just wrote it up as kind of a quick intro. But before we get to that, I just wanted to introduce my esteemed co-host Cory Nod. And Cory, if you don't mind just uh,
Yeah.
telling us who you are and what you do.
I am Cory Knott, co-owner of Take Wing Coaching, and I do business coaching, especially for partnerships and people running a business together. And congratulations on launching your book, David.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate you going over this with me. And, I really see pieces of this we'll be talking about for a while, as we have been on this show for a long time. And I have the slide up on the screen as the cover of the book, and it's really up for pre-sale right now on my website. It comes out March 1st, and it's at www.davidmkirsten.com. And, I'll put that link in the chat. I was going to just bring up the table of contents again here, and just show the first chapter. Just to recap, this is part two of our initial discussion. We're just trying to give kind of a little crib sheet about what this book is and what's in it. And really the origins of it is, you see here, last week we went over what is your quantum leap, your purpose, goals, vision, core values. And I call that kind of the bread and butter, what Cory does, what we do on this show, what I've learned from him, and also what I help others with based on that knowledge as well. And it's really the system that kind of I found that works for me. But um, I wanted to kind of pose the question to you, big picture first, Cory, about why most people, maybe a lot of people have never heard of a strategy for success, or why would you even need kind of a new strategy? And I didn't think I needed anything for a long time till you get stuck. But what do you think about this need, or who might benefit from something like this?
Well, yeah, I think a strategy sometimes we can just fall into being successful to some extent. I certainly did that for the first several years of my business, and it was often just being in the right place at the right time. But even then, I developed strategies, right, for marketing myself and finding business that maybe it's just because of my creativity that I kind of got lucky. I didn't think about it as strategy, but it was definitely strategy. But then, along the way, as I wanted to pursue a more purposeful and passionate career, I had to work on business planning and strategy for how am I going to um, sell within a market that is a little more resistant. It takes time to consider the needs and has a lot more options. And so on top of that, just it's not just a strategy for business success, but also in terms of how am I going to make this work and maintain the lifestyle that I want and help the people that I want to help. And so having that strategy means not the happy-go-lucky strategy that I use in my software development. It meant I worked with a lot of people I didn't really care about, but it didn't matter because I was having, it paid well and I was having a good time. But over time, that dries up. The market has changed, and now I want to work with people that I really enjoy working with and helping. And so having a strategy to reach those kind of people is very important. Otherwise, I won't be successful. And so that means also looking within how I do things and how I brand myself. And so I think that's true for a lot of people is looking at that personal branding and what do they really want so that they get what they are after.
Thank you. And, eye-opening experience in my life was really coming to these ideas after I'd already been in BNI, and then you see these ideas and what makes people successful. The people who were successful in BNI or outside, that's our business networking group. They all have, I think, some aspect of these, that they have this goal and a purpose. If you talk to them, and I think and talking to people about what makes them tick, their daily practice. And so that's kind of the validity of a lot of this stuff. I just started to see how important this stuff was to the people who I saw that I were successful, that I admired, people like Dale Marie and Cory and Mike Macedonia or Don Lyons, kind of in our local networks. But what do you think about in looking at the lives of successful people, Cory, who you've been exposed to a lot of people in tech, but also, throughout maybe history or people who you admire. Do they have some type of strategy that, as you learn about their lives that kind of help propel their success?
Yeah, I mean, there's several um, people that I've followed over the years who, I mean, there's always vision, right? Is always having the vision to stick to. I think Ivan is talking about that really well because it goes more to what I do in co-creation, which is, the biggest challenge people have are the obstacles that get in the way of vision. They start to focus on the obstacles and not on how to overcome, they're looking at how to overcome them, but the fact is they wouldn't be so big if they stuck to the vision. And that's how Ivan's company trained us as coaches, is to be, to go up that ladder of vision. And listening to other people like Keith Ferrazzi and uh, all the, Timothy Ferriss and all that, it's often the strategy, it's the vision, but it's also relationships, right? It's people sometimes think these entrepreneurs do it all alone, but the fact is most of them are really good at building relationship, right? It's the networking, it's networking up, it's finding the places to help others so that in some point, they turn around and help you.
Oh, I just lost your audio there. Oh,
It's
you got muted. Okay.
my little office companion is running across the keyboard, and so, um, so that's it's relationships, it's vision. There's a number of different factors, which I think it makes business fun. I think that's really what I love about it is it's always, I always looked at business like, okay, you just hang out a shingle and then customers come and you do it. But ultimately, when I learned about the vision process, about meeting people, building relationships, and so on, I found that to be really fun. It's challenging because I'm a deep introvert, but it's also just been very fulfilling.
Yeah, you bring well put, and you bring up a great point about relationships. And I think this book's really maybe intended for somebody who maybe already doesn't have that type of network or they want to develop it. And we didn't put a lot of the networking in this book. I'd like to put that out in something else, or we talk about a lot of that on the podcast. I think that's one of our strong suits. And your expertise in referral marketing and networking, but I think, a lot of these ideas, for example, before maybe were passed down via word of mouth, that somebody who has that group already, they might not need to read that much because they just kind of live this stuff every day. And but it helps kind of bring clarity when you do some reading. And I think a lot of people who do this networking, they're also learning about new things too. Um, One thing, you actually develop kind of your own community with Lyft and around the ideas that you teach. And one of those kind of key subsets is actually a chapter in this book, and that was left out, and that's core values. And I just think this is a hugely important thing and initial exercise about connecting with our core values. And could you just to tell us kind of where this came from and why this, is important for business owners, even though it's a bit counterintuitive about how important that could be.
Yeah, I think there was a time when business was really, and again, Ivan Misner talks a lot about this. Business was really about competition. It's like just get all the business you can, and make sure that you're kind of um, overcoming your competitors and all that. But even then, you would still see that, many businesses would have some kind of mission statement, expressing their values. Like we, are always honest and integrity and how we serve our customers and so on. And if those are truly their core values, then they'll stick to them. And I think that the core values process is really finding out more about yourself and where you're likely to feel the most compatible with people and where you're likely to feel conflict. And sometimes we don't know what are our true core values. Our own friend Tracy Stanton is actually doing a class on, are your core values really yours, right? Because sometimes we get them from our parents, like they were kind of, the parents said this should be a value that you hold, but you don't. And so or maybe you have it in a different way. So I always love the core value process, one way or another, of saying, okay, this is what I believe. What do I believe about it? And then what does this mean in terms of the customers that I serve and the kind of people that I'm going to work with? So as we collaborate more with our clients, it becomes important that we match values.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to build connections over values. I think there's nothing more interesting than hearing somebody get up in a room and talk about a value that's important to them that you actually share. That's like a natural connection when they say, like, I like creativity, or with you, you really value, independent thought, and, a lot of things we connect on, a lot of core values. And that's part of our kind of analysis after the fact of why we get along so well. But it helps to know that as entrepreneurs going into it, because then you kind of see who you connect with best, and why that is. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's valuable in every kind of relationship. Um, and I also, doing the mind sonar test, I have found that sometimes people don't see, until they really understand not just the values, but the criteria and the beliefs that they filter things through, how sometimes it's getting in their way, right? They're doing something that isn't consistent with what their core values are. And so that helps find that, it's like one of my core values is really, and Gail too, in our company, is adventure. We love the adventure of being in business and so on. And there are times where I'm just like not getting out and doing anything. It's like, well, this just doesn't feel very adventurous right now. So it gets in my way. It slows me down. Yeah.
yeah, and I have some just an introduction to core values there, and I have a list and some exercises that you're an expert in that I kind of just introduced. And if folks want to hear more about core values, Corey has a course coming up, which I'm going to put on Wide Angle Media. We'll put that in the comments here too. If not this week, then next week. Do you have the date for that core values?
I don't know if we do. I believe it's going to be around mid-April.
Okay.
We're hosting it for a group that is going to be working on that too.
We'll
So
we'll we'll share it when it's ready. And the next item, I'm going to try to move through some of these quick because we're already on chapter 6, and I want to at least get to chapter 12 just briefly. So we'll just do a little bit of a lightning round here. Um, Chapter 6 is what is your daily practice? And I think this is the middle of the book, but I almost think it's really the centerpiece of the whole system, so to speak. How to develop a daily practice that works for you. This is really what when I did this is what started bringing about a lot of changes in my life. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on daily practice, Corey, and that as a driver for success, and how to get started finding a daily practice that works for you.
yeah, well, I'm not been great at making that a habit, and I do work on that. But I think it's definitely, connecting to vision and having a way. I guess there's a lot of different ways to do daily habits. I use more of a kind of like a briefing, I call it, which is just has all my inspiring stuff in it to kind of help remind me what I'm doing each day, and I try to get to it at least a few times a week. But the more I do it, the better it is. Yeah. So that could be the challenge, right? Is again sticking to the vision. As I was saying, the obstacles come up constantly. I mean, if you're doing anything these days, it just seems like, there's tax obstacles, insurance obstacles, there's, employment, there's so many things going on, and that can all just kind of feel like an overwhelming load. So the vision, the purpose, and the mission, and all those other things that we tell ourselves, we kind of have to connect to it every day in order to keep those obstacles from being overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think the one important takeaway here is that how do we do something to keep us motivated every day, like you're saying? One thing that really helps for me is listening to a book on Audible for about 10 or 15 minutes, like Earl Nightingale, talking about success or staying on track, or, just to give you some encouragement in the morning. Because I think sometimes we wake up and we don't feel like doing anything some days, but we actually have to keep moving towards our goals. So how do we get in that vibration that's going to keep us in a productive mode, through COVID, through all this craziness that goes on out there in the world? Yeah. Um, if you have a follow-up, feel free to jump in. I'm going to go through a couple of these things pretty quick. There's a chapter on self-image, which we've talked a lot about on this show. I'd say that's probably another very important chapter, as all of these are. How to create the person that's going to propel your success. Chapter 8 is how to go about constructing a definite plan to achieve your goals. And this comes right out of Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill book. And it's something that Cory is also good at helping develop for folks, because once you have this vision, you actually have to have something that puts that into action. And this is really the big gap for a lot of entrepreneurs, how to get out of their head and get into action. Do you have any thoughts on this definite plan, the importance of it, and how entrepreneurs might want to approach getting a kind of a practical plan that's going to get them the results that they want?
Yeah, well, in my world, I think that I find that a lot of people don't really like planning, and so it's always a challenge, right? It's to sit down and figure out an action plan based on the goals, and ultimately, it's about finding the right goals and using tools to, again, we go to the vision, we go to the values and so on. Are these goals in alignment with that? And then what's the action to get there? The thing I love about action planning is it sometimes will reveal whether it's even feasible to do what you're planning to do, or if something needs to change. Right? We can set lofty goals and not reach them. It's very disappointing, but often it's because the plan wasn't there, or wasn't carefully planned to figure out that it just wasn't feasible. So I actually am kind of starting to toy with using AI to do some planning, but it's not really all that good at it. But it sometimes helps kind of organize, like, these are some more steps that maybe you're missing. So um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I actually start with that in the chapter, that I feel like miss definite plans actually a bit of a misnomer, because it's intimidating. And so I talk about kind of how to create a direction and kind of
yeah.
really a practical version of a definite plan. um
Oh no, it's super valuable, obviously. And again, it's like early on I would have said, "Oh, I'm not really big on goals or planning," but you don't get anywhere if you don't do that.
yeah,
And
yeah, I think the important thing is to revisit it and continue to revamp it and change it. Especially, not everything works. Sometimes you got to just throw it in the garbage and rework it, So I think,
yeah.
or things change too under COVID. Look at how we had to completely change our business model in a lot of ways. So just another big one that we don't really have time to talk that much about, but this is a huge key here to this terror barrier, this thing that um, you know everything, putting out this book, even there's a terror barrier. It's a psychological barrier that I'm about to leave my comfort zone, and then we pull back. So any major change that we make in our life, you hit that terror barrier. And this term comes from Bob Proctor. um how how do entrepreneurs, how can we fight through fear? What's going to get us through the fear? I know you mentioned a lot about obstacles, but a lot of times there's those obstacles there, but we can't get through them because of fear, or when they all build up, that's even like a compounded version of fear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes beyond the obstacles. I think when you find that the obstacle is just too big to overcome, I mean, there's also things that get in the way that can be, considered obstacles. Just, the day-to-day stuff and the bigger stuff and the things that, draw us away. But sometimes those obstacles are actually a function of that fear too. So it's like, yeah, we can put obstacles in our own way just so that we can avoid the feeling like I'm not going to launch this book because I've got family problems, right? You make a problem bigger than it really is just in order to have that as an excuse, right? We're very good at self sabotage and playing our own persecutors. But I think that that's where really it helps to either have a coach or a mastermind or any number of these tools where people can reflect back to you what it is you're doing and gain some self-awareness. And because that just like you did with Bob Proctor, right? It's if you don't have that self-awareness and continue to work on it, then those fears really rise up. I certainly deal with them all the time, and it's like peeling back an onion. You get one step and then there's more to it. It never really stops. And I see that even with highly successful people that I admire, that it seems like that just things don't move forward and you never really know. You can't see why. But I did like that one phrase that what did the billionaire said? It says once you make your first billion, then the next one's pretty easy. So, I guess that's what to aim for, right?
Yeah, well put. And
You're past that terror.
yeah, so chapter 10, and Earl Nightingale calls this the magic word, um, attitude, how to keep a positive attitude. And this goes with daily practice and a vision. Chapter 11 is called What Makes You the One? And this is about finding out kind of what makes us unique, our passion, getting to the bottom of our why, to use our unique skills and interests and passion to find that vocation that works for us. Do you believe that there's kind of a vocation out there for almost everybody that you can kind of cut through this and that you can get to something that you're good at if you have coaching and you have, some instruction?
Yeah, I'd say that it's not always necessarily the vocation. It can also be, how you serve or what you serve or what you do, right? So I think I always look at the why as being, okay, so what is the transformation you're helping others achieve? And that can be done through your vocation or it can be done through finding the right people, right? If it's um, I've seen insurance agents with a really good why, right? Because of the value that they bring. We have our mortgage broker has a really good why, right? Just never having a home in her life until later on she's helping other people get into homes. It's like it's so like for people who are going to have that home for the first time. So I think yes, there is having the why is very important to actually pretty much everything. If you don't have the why, then everything else is kind of fake. You don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, yeah. Well put in a nutshell. Chapter 12 is this idea of leader shift, how to move from being a follower to a leader. And a lot of this stuff is kind of unconventional or kind of, Earl Nightingale calls it like you don't want to be part of the crowd. If you're going in the same direction as everybody else, that's not where you want to be if you want to be a leader. So, just some introduction to that. And really, here's just a little recap before we end this segment and get to our 11 a.m. guest, which is Rebecca Galvin. We're going to talk about some exciting B&I stuff and speakers. But here's kind of a synopsis of that table of contents. The book's a strategy for success, and it's really just a handbook that's a kind of a company to this show. A lot of ideas that Cory has developed and taught, and that have melded with a lot of these other ideas that I've come across once I got on this path that he and B and I helped me get on. So, something in here for everybody, I like to say, and we just wanted to introduce it coming out March 1st. And I will put that link to your business, or you have a flight plan coming up March 20th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's called Flight Plan on business, on kind of creating a flight plan to get your business off the ground. And I'll just say one difference, between kind of a strategy for success and I would say flight plan or lift is that this is a little bit more towards other things that may not necessarily be a business. It may be like a nonprofit or something. Whereas I think a lot of the stuff Ascentive does is like purely business. But I was just gonna make that note. If you have any closing notes about what you're doing in flight plan on March 20th, feel free to tell us why somebody might want to attend that.
Yeah, well, we covered the basics of creating that strategic plan, and I think it's we always look at it as creating a that's very unique to the person and the company they want to create and the lifestyle they want to create. And then it also includes access to Lyft, and uh, so that's our membership platform where you get access to all the materials and videos and everything else for 90 days. And you can also join us for our not our office hours, but our co-working sessions.
Okay, perfect. I'll put that link to your website to become a member of Lyft and to that workshop on March 20th called Flight Plan. That flight plan, more than any other thing, helped me with my business get on track. In just one session, you can get a ton of takeaways. So thanks for joining us for this initial segment. It's www.davidmkirsten.com to pre-order that book, and we'll be talking about it as we go forward, along with a lot of other great stuff that Cory has coming out as well. And with that, we'll see you at the 11 a.m. segment here, which we're a bit over.